you here for?
Right then, let's get started with some nice basics. And by the way, we are in the new workshop, so the lighting is maybe not as what it usually is, but just to start off with, right, it's nice and basic. We're just going to cut these off the sprue using some nice cutters. You know, you want to spend a bit of money on cutters, you know, because the more you spend, the better the quality. And what we want to do is we just want to nip it so we don't nip right up to the actual piece that we could potentially damage the piece, but we actually just leave a little bit of the tab, just a little bit left on the piece, just as you can just see there, and that gives us, you know, a nicer, better, sort of safer cut, so to speak. But yeah, we then got these little tabs just to kind of sort out there. Now with this particular piece and every piece really, you'll see that there's a slight little join line, right? You could just see this sort of a line just running down the middle of these rubber tyres here on our wheel, and you get that's where the moulds come together, and you want to sort of take care of that with all sorts of all the pieces. But because these are our road wheels, we want to add sort of like a nice bit of weathering to this, as well as getting rid of these tabs and getting rid of the bit of the join line that we've got there. Now I'm using a nice flat coarse sanding stick. These are the Flurry model sanding sticks. You know, you can go anywhere online, Hanans, Models are Go, you know, pretty much anywhere, and you can get sanding sticks like this. There are all other sanding sticks like this as well, but this is a nice set to get. And what we're going to simply do here is we're just going to sand it so that we get rid of the tabs and get rid of our join line. Now I'm sanding in one direction, which is the direction in which these wheels are going to be moving, not this way, right? We want the scratches and the roughness to be, you know, the direction in which they're going to be rolling, and we want to sand it all the way down to the point where we no longer see any tabs or join lines or anything like that. So I'm just going around with this, and what this is basically going to do is take us from having sort of like a nice smooth finish to having a nice rough surface. Now you also don't want to really sort of go at it, right, because if we do that we can potentially turn this wheel into a bit of a flat top, right? So don't go at it too much, just nicely enough just to take and put a nice rough surface on it, because if we end up having flat tops it's not going to look round anymore, and if it doesn't look round anymore it's going to look a bit naff, right? So we're almost there, this last little bit, there we go. And what we've done there, we've taken out, I've just missed a spot, let's just sort that out. What we've done, we've taken out all those tabs, right, and we just blow this off camera, and what we've ended up with now is we've got this nice rough surface where it's going to meet the tracks, which adds an extra little bit of sort of weathering, so to speak, to our build. What I also like to do is we can just cut in to our piece of our wheel, and this is like going to be, this is representing the rubber, and rubber, when it goes along on the tracks, you know, you get stones and bricks and stuff get into the tracks, and that can chip away here and there at our rubber wheels, right? So you just want to cut as if it's like chopped out a chunk of rubber here and there, you know, and there's a lot of wheels to do. So I mean, you know, some wheels can be more heavier than others, some wheels, you know, could maybe look a bit more newer and have no cuts in them, or just maybe one cut, but keep it nice and random, and it's just going to add that extra bit of flavour. And when we kind of put pigments on this, like way down the line, you know, it's going to go into those cuts and everything and bring them out and make this all look nice. Now there's a load of wheels to do, so I'm going to crack on doing the rest of the wheels just like that. Right, with both of our idle wheels now nicely sanded up, we've got these nice sort of rubbery sort of O-rings going on here, and we just want to cut off the biggest ones, and we're going to need 2 because we've got our drive wheel as well. Right, now normally when you have these little rubbery things, it normally means that these road wheels and everything can actually turn, right? So what we need to do is, just make sure it's the right side, we need to just pop our rubber bit just into our little hole there, and then we also get with it, we get another piece that we then put on top of here. Right, and we get some glue out. Now I'm using Tamiya extra thin cement. There is product reviews on different types of sort of welding glues. You've got Tamiya extra thin cement, Cement S, you've got the Akan welding glue as well that you can go take a look at, and those are on the Genesis Models website under product reviews. Right, and what we can do, we just can put a nice little bit of this glue all the way around. Right, and we know the capillary action is going to get underneath that plastic, melt it together and lock in that nice rubbery O-ring, right? So then when we kind of push that onto the actual model, it will have a bit of turn to it, a bit of play. So with that on, we can then bring our 2 road wheels together. Now it's always good to have a nice little test before doing any gluing, right? Because then we can see if we've got any problems, and as you can see, we don't. Now with this, right, we can just put a nice little blob just in the middle there, and that should be enough for it to glue together, right? I mean, normally we put the 2 pieces together and then sort of glue, but it's a bit tricky to actually get into that road wheel or any sort of other piece. You know, if you can sort of get away with actually putting it down, bringing the 2 together, that is just fine. And the same goes for our drive wheels, right? Our drive wheels also, you know, we put in our little bit of rubber bit there, and then we glue it together just the same. Just remember to nicely test fit it first. Now we come to like the first part of the front hull section. Now what we've got here, we've got a nice piece that just goes on here, which is actually a really nice fit, but it's one of these sort of, we don't actually have any sort of pins that go into it. It just seems to, you know, just glue straight together, right, on flat surface to flat surface. So it's a bit sort of maneuvering around. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to have a nice little bit of Tamiya thin cement just on my brush, and I'm just going to run it round the edges. I'm not putting on a lot here at all. What I'm basically doing, right, is just slightly sort of melting the glue, melting the plastic, because the glue is going to melt the plastic a little bit, make it a little bit sticky, and then we can sort of put this on, and sort of hopefully it'll be sticky enough just to hold it in position a bit, right? And we just want to press that in a little bit so it's looking all good. Now that's not glued into place very well, but it's just enough for us to play around and make sure and get it right, which it looks good actually, and that's just holding enough into place. Now whenever you get the chance with any kind of plastic gluing, if you can get in from the back, get in from the back. It just gives you such a nicer, stronger, neater glue, right? And with that nicely in the back, I like to then get as little as I can on the brush, right, and we can just touch up on the outside very lightly, very finely, just to lightly sort it out, all nice. Right, so always try and glue from the inside if you can. And there we go, that's nicely into place, looking good. We've also got this other piece, and again, you know, nice, simple, easy gluing. Right, we've got 2 little holes here which we can just put a little bit of glue in there, right, just so as our 2 little notches will line up nicely and go in there, and that just holds it into place for us to then glue. And again, you know, we can get in from the inside, so let's get it in there and get that nicer, better glue job by getting in from the back, nice and light on the outside. Right, and actually I think we may need a bit of pressure on this. We've got a slight bit of gappage. Right, so we could potentially come along with a peg just to hold it down a little bit better, just at the back there. Right, and we leave that for about, you know, an hour to dry with the peg on, and that should look fantastic. Now we're going to do the bottom of the hull section. Now this, again, it's a nice fit, it's just a little bit sort of tricky because we've got not much to actually hold it in place. It's just gluing flat plastic to flat plastic. So what we want to do, like we've sort of done before, we put a nice bit of glue down straight away, right where the actual glue lines are going to be, just to get it sort of nicely melting and making the plastic sticky. And then we can put this first piece on top, right? And what that's hopefully going to do is just hold it in place long enough, right, for us to bring our sides together, because our sides are going to be tricky without this centerpiece in first, right? Because our sides can now glue to this centerpiece that I've just glued in a bit better, right? So just testing the fit first, and then where our glue lines are going to be, again, let's get that first bit of glue in there just so as we just start the gluing process, right? Just to nicely hold it into place. Run that all the way along. Right, it may look as though it's drying really quickly, evaporating really quickly because it's open to the air, but it'll just make it sticky enough to hold it into place. Right, just enough for us to go, right, that is looking nice and perfect there. Now we can come in with a nice amount of glue and actually do the whole letting the glue flow, capillary action in between the two pieces of plastic and melting them together. Right, and that should start to hold quite well, quite quickly as well. And there we go. That could have been quite a very sort of fiddly job, trying to keep that kind of holding it up and trying to this and that, but you know, that first bit of glue just holds it into place for you to then bring the other pieces together. And the same goes for the other side piece as well, and that should be really good. But you want to make sure everything is lining up nice and straight, because we're building this hull from building it up rather than it normally coming in one whole piece. You know, we want to make sure it's nice and all straight and everything lines up properly, because it's just going to throw everything else out if we don't get this nice and perfect now. Now we have pieces H1 and 3. I've already put H1 in, but these literally just nicely slot in, maybe a little bit of a push just there, and it notches in quite nicely. Now you've got to make sure it's nicely lined up nicely and perfectly just at the front there, and it does sort of hold in rather nice. And we're just now going to run some glue, and this is on the insides, which we're not going to see. Remember, if you can glue on the inside, always glue on the inside. Let that capillary action just nicely flow between the two pieces of plastic. Right, and then let's just make sure we're all good and looking nice. Now we don't have to worry about any gaps or anything that's going to be going along here, but we'll run a nice bit of glue across anyway. Right, and the reason for that is when we come round to the weathering stage, underneath here is going to get a nice bit of weathering, so if there are any little gaps, basically the weathering is going to fill in those gaps, which is going to be rather nice. And then we have a couple of pieces just at the back here, which is like piece 06 and 014. They literally just nicely sit on there just like that. Really nice. Just hold it in position with a finger, and then again, you know, let's get in at the back and run that in nice and quickly, and there you go. That is all good there. Make sure it's all nicely lining up, real nice. Maybe a bit of a push here and there. So that's all good. And then again, you know, we've got our piece 014. It's just going to go at the back there. But I think I've showed you enough sort of like little bits of glue in here and there. You may have noticed how little white things come off the Tamiya lid. It does do that after you've been using it for a while. I just sort of place it sort of back on, and then if you screw it down really tight, it does sort of go back into place, as you can see there. You know, don't just throw it away if it comes off. You know, you want to get that back on. It's like a nice air sealing thing. So, you know, that's that, and I'll move on with the rest of the build. What we have here is the deflector, and this is rather a bit of a fiddly sort of hard bit to glue together because there isn't anything that sort of connects to anything. So what we need to do here is we take our 4 pieces, right, and we need to look at the instructions and make sure we've put them on and orientated in the right way, right, just like so. But we've got to somehow glue them together and glue these side bits on as well. So what I'm going to do is we need to sort of hold this all together a little bit better. So what we're going to do is we're just going to put a little bit of our Tamiya extra in cement just on our raised bit here, right, because if you remember what this does is it just makes it a little bit sort of tacky. It doesn't fully glue it, but it does it just enough, right, and then we want to sort of put it down on the table so we know we're going to be nice and sort of straight, right. Yeah, so that lines up nicely, and then we just need to work through the rest, just that little bit of glue, just enough to sort of hold it into place. You know, we don't need it properly glued yet, and then we just push it down on the table so as it's all going to line up nicely. And then again with the last piece, like so, again place it on, turn it up and hold it straight down onto the table, right, and that is looking all nice and straight, as you can see there. So what I'm just going to do now is I'm just going to put in a bit more glue. Now we know it's all good, right, to start it really sort of gluing into place. I'm just touching it, letting the capillary action flow in, get both sides, and then while it's still wet we can put this down on the table again and make sure it's all nicely lined up and straight. Give it a little push, right, and that should be, you know, pretty much all good now and held into position. Then we want to get our piece 010, right, and we want the actual piece that sticks out just here, and we want that sticking outwards, right, that bit that sticks outwards, we want that to stay sticking outwards, right, and we could probably do the same little trick, just sort of lightly glue the sides just so it just lightly sticks into place, right, and then we can just line this up, which it isn't quite lined up, so I'm just giving a little bit of a push and making sure everything is lining up, which it now is, and then we can come in and put the glue in, which is really going to lock this in. And there we go. Right, so you just need to take this bit a bit at a time, little bits of glue in just to hold it in generally. Maybe hold that down for a bit, and do the same on the other side. So, you know, just take your time with this, little bits of glue in, let it lightly glue, and just slowly move along.